I remember those days like they were yesterday. Mom, Dad, and me, 10-year-old Lily, the perfect little family. We weren't rich or famous, just ordinary folks living our best life in a quiet suburb. Dad worked as an accountant, always buried in numbers, but he'd light up when he got home. Mom was a teacher, spreading knowledge and kindness wherever she went. Weekends were for exploring. We'd pile into our beat-up minivan and hit the road. Dad would blast his favorite 80s pop songs, and Mom would sing along, terribly off-key, but not caring one bit. I'd sit in the back, rolling my eyes but secretly loving every minute of it. Those road trips were the best. We'd stop at dingy diners, ordering greasy burgers and sharing a giant milkshake. Mom would always steal my fries, claiming she was just testing them for poison, sweetie. When we weren't traveling, we'd hit up the local mall. I'd drag them from store to store, trying on ridiculous outfits and begging for the latest toys. Mom was the voice of reason, but Dad was a softie. He'd slip me a few extra bucks when Mom wasn't looking, whispering, "Our little secret, lily pad." Friday nights were pizza nights. We'd order in, sprawl out on the living room floor, and watch cheesy movies. Dad would try to explain the plots, Mom would shush him, and I'd stuff my face with pepperoni, not caring about anything but the moment. Those were the days, carefree and filled with the warmth of family. Little did I know, a storm was brewing on the horizon, threatening to shatter our perfect little world. It all started when I was 11. Mom began getting tired all the time. At first, we didn't think much of it. Teaching is exhausting after all. But then came the doctor visits, the worried whispers, the hushed phone calls. I didn't understand what was happening. Nobody told me anything, but I could feel the change in the air. The laughter became less frequent, the road trips stopped, and pizza nights were replaced with quiet, tense dinners. One night I overheard Dad on the phone, his voice cracking as he spoke. "The treatments aren't working, Mike. I don't know what we're going to do." That's when I knew something was very wrong with Mom, and our perfect little world was about to shatter. I wish I could go back to those happy days, freeze time and stay in that bubble of blissful ignorance forever. But life doesn't work that way. The storm was coming, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. For now, I close my eyes and try to remember the good times. The smell of Mom's perfume, the sound of Dad's laughter, the taste of Friday night pizza. Those memories are all I have left of the life I once knew, the life I desperately wish I could return to. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was supposed to be pizza night, but there was no pizza, no laughter, no Mom. Just silence and the horrible beeping of hospital machines. "Lily pad," Dad said, his voice cracking. "Mom? She's gone." Just like that, my world collapsed. Mom, my rock, my best friend, was gone. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just stood there numb as Dad hugged me, his tears soaking my hair. The next few weeks were a blur of black clothes, hushed voices, and casseroles. I couldn't bring myself to eat. I kept expecting Mom to walk through the door, to tell me it was all a bad dream, but she never did. Then, about 6 months after we lost Mom, something changed. Dad started going out more. I thought he was getting better, trying to move on, until I saw her. She was tall, blonde, and nothing like Mom. Her name was Karen, and she had a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Lily pad, this is Karen," Dad said, looking nervous. "We've been seeing each other." I couldn't believe it. Mom wasn't even cold in her grave, and he was already replacing her. Karen bent down, her face inches from mine. "Hi, Lily. I've heard so much about you." When Dad wasn't looking, Karen's smile dropped. Her eyes turned cold and calculating. In that moment, I knew this woman was trouble. Over the next few weeks, Karen was everywhere. She'd come over for dinner, watch TV with us, even try to help me with my homework. But the moment Dad's back was turned, the mask would slip. "Listen, kid," she hissed one day when we were alone. "I'm here to stay. Don't get any ideas about messing this up for me." I tried to tell Dad. I really did. But he just shook his head. "Lily, I know this is hard for you, but Karen's a good person. You're just jealous. Maybe we should get you to talk to someone." Jealous? I couldn't believe it. My own father thought I was making this up. Before I knew it, I was sitting in a therapist's office, being told I had adjustment issues and difficulty with change. Karen had somehow convinced everyone, Dad, our relatives, even the neighbors, that I was the troubled one. Poor Lily, I'd overhear her saying on the phone. She's having such a hard time. There are mental problems. We're getting her the help she needs. Then came the bombshell. A year and a half after Mom died, Dad dropped the news. Lilypad, Karen, and I were getting married. We thought it'd be best if you spent the summer at camp, give you some time to adjust. But I knew the truth. They were shipping me off so I wouldn't ruin their perfect day with my sour face, as Karen put it. I left for camp with a heavy heart, knowing that when I returned, everything would be different. My home wouldn't be mine anymore. My family was changing, and there was nothing I could do about it. I returned from camp with a knot in my stomach. The house looked the same from the outside, but as soon as I stepped through the door, I knew everything had changed. "Welcome home, Lily," Karen said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We need to talk about room arrangements. With the baby coming, we'll need to make some changes." My head spun. "Baby? What baby?" Dad's face lit up. "That's right. You don't know? Karen's pregnant. You're going to be a big sister." Karen led me upstairs, chattering about nursery colors and baby names. We stopped at my room, or what used to be my room. "We've started converting this into the nursery," Karen said, pushing open the door. My heart sank. My posters were gone, replaced by pastel wallpaper. My desk had vanished, a crib standing in its place. "Where's my stuff?" I managed to choke out. Karen waved dismissively. "Oh, we moved you to the guest room. It's cozier anyway." The guest room was barely bigger than a closet. My things were piled haphazardly on the bed, some boxes still sealed. "This is temporary, right?" I asked, looking at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, Lilypad, with the new baby." I got the message. I was being pushed out, replaced. The next few months were a blur of doctor's appointments, baby showers, and me trying to make myself as small as possible. Karen's belly grew, and with it, her control over our lives. Then, one crisp fall morning, my little brother Ethan was born. Despite everything, when I held him for the first time, I felt a surge of love. For a moment, I thought maybe things would get better. But Karen had other plans. "Careful, Lily," she'd say, snatching him away. "You might drop him." Or, "He's sleeping now. Maybe you can see him later." There was always an excuse, always a reason why I couldn't spend time with my brother. Dad was too busy with work and the new baby to notice. Years passed. I threw myself into school, counting down the days until I could leave for college. Ethan grew into a sweet, curious kid, but Karen made sure our interactions were limited. I'd catch him drawing, lost in his own world, and we'd share a smile, a silent understanding. But it was never enough. Finally, my senior year arrived. One night, I overheard Karen and Dad arguing. "She needs to learn responsibility," Karen insisted. "A job right out of high school would do her good." Dad's voice was firm. "No. Sarah wanted her to go to college. We set aside money for it. Lily's going." I'd never been so grateful for my dad standing up for me. When my acceptance letter came, I cried with relief. I was getting out. I was going to start my own life, away from Karen's manipulations. On moving day, Dad helped me pack the car. Karen and Ethan stayed home. "I'm proud of you, Lilypad," Dad said, hugging me goodbye. "Your mom would be too." As I drove away, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. I was leaving behind the only home I'd known and the little brother I never really got to know. But I was also driving towards freedom, towards a future where I could be myself without Karen's shadow looming over me. College was like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make something of myself. Advertising became my passion, a world where creativity met strategy, and I could finally express myself freely. But even as I reveled in my newfound independence, there was always a nagging ache in my heart. Ethan, barely 6 when I left, was growing up without me. During rare visits home, I'd catch glimpses of the amazing kid he was becoming. "Lily, look what I drew," he'd exclaim, showing me his latest masterpiece. I'd ruffle his hair, cherishing these brief moments. "It's awesome, buddy. You're quite the artist." Karen would inevitably interrupt, whisking him away for some urgent task or another. The distance between us grew with each passing year. Graduation day arrived, a bittersweet triumph. As I stood in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd, I realized Dad and Karen weren't there. Later, a curt text arrived. "Congratulations on graduating, Dad, Karen." It stung, but I refused to let it dampen my spirits. I had a future to build. Thanks to my internships and portfolio, I landed a job at a hip advertising agency in the city. Grandma, Mom's mom, and my guardian angel helped me secure a tiny but cozy apartment. "Your mother would be so proud," she said, pressing a check into my hand. "This is for rent. She always wanted you to have a good start." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was challenging but rewarding. I made friends, went on dates, and slowly began to heal from the wounds of my past. For 3 years, I lived in relative peace, with only occasional awkward holiday visits to break the calm. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "Lilypad, it's Dad. I have some news. We've sold the house and bought a new place. Bigger, more modern. I was hoping, well, would you help us move? It might be a good chance for us to reconnect." I was speechless. After years of distance, this sudden olive branch felt surreal. "Karen would be happy to see you too," he added, though I doubted that. "And your brother, Lily. He's 12 now. He asks about you all the time." I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect myself from more hurt. But another part, the part that still missed my family, that longed for reconciliation, won out. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll come." "Great." Dad's relief was palpable. "I'll text you the address. See you this weekend." As I packed a bag for the weekend, my emotions swirled. Hope mingled with anxiety, excitement with dread. Whatever happened, this visit would change everything. I just didn't know if it would be for better or worse. I pulled up to the address, my jaw dropping at the sight. The house was enormous, all sleek lines and modern architecture. It looked nothing like the cozy home I grew up in. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Dad opened it, a hesitant smile on his face. "Lilypad, you made it." "Hi, Dad," I said, stepping inside. Karen appeared behind him, her smile as plastic as ever. "Lily, how nice of you to come," she said, her tone suggesting anything but. I looked around, expecting to see Ethan. "Where's—" "Oh, he's staying with my parents for the weekend," Karen cut in smoothly. "We thought it would be easier to move without him underfoot." The look in her eyes told me everything. This was deliberate. She'd made sure Ethan wouldn't be here, denying me even this small chance to reconnect with him. Swallowing my disappointment and anger, I forced a smile. "So, where do you want me to start?" For the next few hours, I threw myself into the work. I scrubbed floors, arranged furniture, and hung curtains. It was easier than trying to make conversation with Dad or enduring Karen's false pleasantries. As I was sorting through some boxes in what would be the study, I came across a pile of framed photos. My heart stopped as I recognized one particular frame. It was a portrait of Mom, the one that used to hang in my childhood bedroom. Her smile beamed at me from beneath a layer of dust. Clutching the photo, I walked into the living room where Dad and Karen were discussing paint colors. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Why is Mom's picture in a pile of junk?" Dad's face fell, a mix of guilt and sadness crossing his features. He opened his mouth to speak, but Karen beat him to it. "Oh, that old thing," she said dismissively. "We decided those photos don't really fit with the new decor. They're a bit superfluous, don't you think?" Superfluous. The word hit me like a slap. My mother's memory, reduced to an outdated decoration. "Superfluous?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "This is my mother. Your wife," I added, looking at Dad. Dad at least had the decency to look ashamed. Lily, we didn't mean… But I was already moving. Gathering up every photo of Mom I could find, I found her old jewelry box, a few of her books. Without a word, I carried them out to my car, ignoring Karen's protests and Dad's weak attempts to explain. As I placed the last item in my trunk, I felt a storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Anger at Karen's callousness, disappointment in Dad's spinelessness, and a deep, aching sadness for the mother I'd lost and the family that seemed beyond repair. I slammed the trunk shut, the sound echoing in the quiet street. For a moment, I considered getting in the car and driving away, leaving this mess behind once and for all. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of Mom, her voice in my head telling me to be strong. Maybe it was the thought of Ethan, who I still hadn't seen. Or maybe it was just sheer stubbornness, refusing to let Karen win. Whatever it was, I found myself walking back into the house. Karen was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding to avoid confrontation. Dad stood in the hallway, looking lost, so I went back to cleaning, trying not to think about Dad's betrayal. As I was about to leave, Dad caught my arm. Lily, wait, there's something else. I turned, eyebrow raised. What now? He shifted uncomfortably. Having a housewarming party. In a few days. We would really appreciate your help. Before I could respond, Karen swooped in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Oh yes, Lily. We could really use your assistance. Perhaps you could handle the catering. I'll take care of the cleaning, invitations, and overall organization. I opened my mouth to refuse, but Dad jumped in. Please, Lily Pad. All our relatives and friends will be there. We can't manage without you. His pleading eyes wore me down. Despite everything, a small part of me still wanted to make him happy. Fine, I sighed. I'll help with the food. I'll even pay for it myself. Karen's smile widened. Wonderful. We're thinking of an Italian theme, to christen the new kitchen. I nodded, an idea forming. Actually, I know the best Italian restaurant. I'll order from there. Quality guaranteed. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. What's the name of this restaurant? Bellissima Notte, I replied, watching her carefully. She nodded, looking satisfied. Sounds perfect. We'll leave it in your capable hands then. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Karen's sudden agreeableness was suspicious, but I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning the perfect menu. I called my friend Maria, owner of Bellissima Notte. Lily, it's been too long, she answered cheerfully. Hey, Maria. I need a favor. My dad's having a housewarming party, and I'm in charge of food. Think you can help me out? For you? Anything. What are you thinking? We spent an hour crafting the perfect Italian spread. Antipasti platters, handmade pasta, tiramisu for dessert, the works. I spared no expense, wanting to prove I could handle this responsibility. After finalizing the order, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped this party might be a turning point. Maybe, just maybe, we could start to heal our fractured family. The next week dragged by slowly. I kept myself busy with work, but my mind often wandered to the upcoming party. I checked and double-checked the order, making sure everything was perfect. The day before the housewarming party, my phone rang. It was Maria from Bellissima Notte. Hey Lily, I'm a bit confused. Your stepmother called yesterday and asked to move the food delivery to today. Did the party date change? My heart sank. What? No, it's supposed to be tomorrow. Oh, Maria sounded worried. Well, I wanted to double-check with you before making any changes. I thanked her, my mind racing. After hanging up, I immediately called Karen, my suspicions on high alert. Hi, Karen. Just wanted to confirm the party details for tomorrow, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, yes. Everything's set for tomorrow at 7 p.m., she replied smoothly. We're looking forward to it. I thanked her and ended the call, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. It was clear now. Karen had tried to change the delivery date behind my back. She wanted me to miss the party entirely. Taking a deep breath, I called Maria back. Hey, it's me again. I need to cancel the order, I said, my voice tight. Cancel. But Lily, are you sure? It's a lot of food, and it's all paid for. I know. Keep the payment. Consider it a gift. Use the food for the restaurant if you can. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The betrayal stung, but a part of me wasn't surprised. This was classic Karen, always finding new ways to push me out. That same evening, curiosity got the better of me. I opened my social media and saw my cousin was live streaming from the party. There it was, the housewarming in full swing, happening right now, a day early. I watched, a mix of hurt and anger building inside me, as Karen showed off the new house. She preened for the camera, pointing out design features and accepting compliments from guests. Suddenly, a voice off camera asked, "Where's Lily? I thought she'd be here." Karen's face changed, a look of false concern replacing her smile. "Oh, you know Lily. She's always been a bit unsociable. Some mental health issues, poor dear. She said she couldn't make it." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mental health issues, unsociable. The lies flowed so easily from her lips. Karen quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation back to the house. "Now, who's ready for some amazing Italian food? It should be here any minute." The guests cheered, and Karen beamed at the camera. Half an hour passed, and I could see the guests starting to look restless. Karen's smile became strained as she kept assuring everyone the food would arrive any minute now. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the live stream. Karen's perfectly crafted facade was crumbling before my eyes. Her smile had become a grimace as she dialed the restaurant's number, the speakerphone amplifying every word for the gathered guests. "Hello, bellissima notte. This is Karen. Where is our food order?" The response was clear and devastating. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that order was canceled earlier today. By Lily. There won't be any delivery." Karen's face contorted with rage. "What? That little—" she shrieked, turning to my father. "Call Lily right now." Dad, looking flustered, pulled out his phone. I watched, heart pounding, as he dialed my number. When I answered, his voice boomed through the speakerphone. "Lily, how could you cancel the food order? You've ruined everything." Taking a deep breath, I replied calmly, "Dad, why did you change the date of the housewarming? Why wasn't I invited?" The room fell silent. Dad's face paled as he stammered, "We, Karen," said someone, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests exchanged meaningful glances, eyeing Karen and Dad with suspicion. Suddenly, Karen snatched the phone from Dad's hand. "You ungrateful brat," she screeched. "After everything we've done for you, you're trying to sabotage us, aren't you?" I let her rant for a moment before speaking, my voice steady and clear. "I think everyone can see now who really has mental health issues in this family, and it's not me." Karen's hysterical shouting filled the room, but I could see the damage was done. Guests were backing away, some already heading for the door. "I'm done being your scapegoat, Karen," I said firmly. "And Dad, I'm done watching you choose her over your own daughter. Goodbye." I ended the call and closed the live stream, my hands shaking, but my resolve strong. It was over. The lies, the manipulation, all of it laid bare for everyone to see. In the days that followed, I ignored the barrage of calls and messages from Dad and other family members. I needed time to process, to heal. A week later, Dad showed up at my apartment. He looked haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Lily Pad, I'm so sorry," he began. "I've been blind. I let Karen control everything, and I lost sight of what really matters. Please give me a chance to make things right." I wanted to slam the door in his face, but something in his expression stopped me. "It's not that simple, Dad. You abandoned me. You forgot about me." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "But I want to change. I promise I'll do better. Please, Lily Pad." Slowly, cautiously, we began to rebuild our relationship. Dad started calling regularly, and we met for coffee every week. He even brought Ethan along sometimes, away from Karen's watchful eye. As for Karen, I heard through the grapevine that she'd become something of a pariah among the family. Her lies exposed, she retreated into a shell of bitterness. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I threw myself into my career, climbing the ranks at the advertising agency. My creativity flourished, fueled by the emotional turmoil I'd endured. I don't know what the future holds for my family. The wounds are deep, and healing takes time. But for the first time in years, I feel hopeful. I'm living life on my terms, pursuing my passions, and slowly, carefully, allowing love back into my heart. As I look out at the city lights from my apartment window, I can almost hear Mom's voice. "You're stronger than you know, Lily Pad," she used to say. And you know what? She was right. Story 2. I can still hear yelling in my earliest recollections. The wall would seem to tremble as Dad's words echoed through our tiny home. Mom would make an effort to speak quietly. She was probably thinking about me and my younger sister Lillian, but occasionally she felt compelled to yell back. Lillian was only 2 years old at the time, and I was 7, so I couldn't fully comprehend what was going on. One morning, I saw my mother singing quietly to Lillian while brushing her hair. I didn't see her do that again after that. The yelling resumed later that day. Even worse than before. "You're not possible. Robert," Mom's voice broke. "Everything I do is under your control. Everyone I spoke with." The divorce was finalized quickly. Mom was simply gone after that one day. Dad informed us that Mom had abandoned us, that she had put other men and booze before her own girls. I was young enough to really trust him, yet old enough to feel deceived and bewildered. Soon after, Sarah was taken home by her father. She was obviously in love with Lillian, younger than Mom, and usually smiling. My little sister took to her right away and called her mother. I was unable to complete it in a few weeks. I always pull away when Sarah tries to give me a hug or style my hair the way my mother used to. Dad would remark sharply, "Chloe, Sarah is making every effort. You must be more appreciative." However, how could I express gratitude? I still had a genuine mother, out there, somewhere. Where had she gone? What kept her from calling? How come she didn't struggle to see us? I was plagued by these questions during my early years. However, I discovered how to keep them to myself. Lillian was lavished with attention by Sarah, who took her to dancing classes and bought her lovely outfits. Every time I was invited, I declined. Instead, I lost myself in my books and studied for hours in my room. Compared to seeing my sister develop a bond with my substitute mother, it was simpler. This continued for years, with Lillian increasingly becoming Sarah's kid and me steadfastly staying on the outside. However, I had a strategy. While Lillian was being prepared to be the ideal daughter, I worked hard in my studies, believing that knowledge would be my key to freedom. I was using scholarship essays and college applications to plan my escape. I was finally free at the age of 18. After spending too much time beneath water, college seemed like a breath of fresh air. Despite its little size, my dorm room was mine. No. Sarah was hovering. No. Dad is making up the rules. No continual reminder that you are the challenging daughter. Even so, I made an effort to stay in touch with Lillian by returning home during breaks. In my last year, on one of these trips, Sarah's preoccupation with decorating made her room, which was all pink and white and resembled a princess's bedroom, where I discovered her. "What do you intend to do once you graduate?" I sat down in her window seat and asked, "Have you given any attention to the colleges you may like to apply to?" Lillian was stretched out on her bed, her nails well trimmed, tapping at the screen of her phone. As nonchalantly as though she were talking about the weather, she added, "Oh, I'm not going to college. I'm getting married." My coffee almost suffocated me. "Are you married? You aren't even 18 yet. What time did this occur?" Last year, Sarah introduced me to Marcus. Her eyes glistened as she eventually raised her head from her phone. The large downtown real estate firm is owned by his family. Preston Properties. Chloe is wealthy, and he's flawless, you know. "What about your dreams, though? You once discussed becoming a teacher." Thinking of the small blackboard she had as a child, I recalled her. Lillian dismissively waved her hand. "It was childish." Sarah says, "In any case, I don't need college." She thinks that having children and starting a family is a woman's true calling. I can begin my actual life right now, so why spend time on degrees? I held onto my coffee mug more tightly, resisting the need to start talking about independence and feminism. Simply consider carefully what you truly desire. Little. Sarah does not want it. Marcus does not want it. What are you looking for? I am aware of my desires. She gave an eye roll. Being a career lady like you is not necessary for everyone. She stated it as though being a career woman was a weakness of some sort. Made my stomach turn. But I said nothing. It was her life to live, after all. I started working as a remote accountant after graduating and got a great flat across town. Despite the lack of glamour, the work paid well and provided me with the independence I so much wanted. In the meantime, Sarah planned every detail of Lillian's extravagant wedding to Marcus, including the final crystal champagne flute. My baby sister became a mother within a year, and little James arrived on time. Emma arrived a year later. My tranquil existence began to fall apart at that point. When Lillian initially arrived there without warning, she was dressed in expensive gym attire that most likely cost more than my rent each month. Despite reportedly being a tired new mother, she managed to appear put together while carrying 2 baby bags. She said, "I have a spa appointment," as she put the bags down in my living room. "You're going to watch them? Regards, sis. Emma may soon require a nappy change, and James is just 8 years old. Oh, and James enjoys napping with a plush elephant. Somewhere in the blue bag." Before I had a chance to comprehend what was going on, I had a newborn and a toddler after she left. This started to happen frequently. With an important appointment, lunch date, or shopping excursion, Lillian would show there and hand the kids off as if they were packages to be delivered. The decision to go on a romantic vacation with Marcus was the actual shock. No asking, no warning. The children and adequate provisions for 3 days just arrived at my door. I was going crazy from the interruptions all the time. It was practically difficult for me to retain the focus and attention to detail that my job as an accountant needed, with 2 little youngsters playing. There would always be a scream, a crash, or a shout at Auntie Chloe whenever I sat down to work on a spreadsheet. I'm starving. I experimented with working late at night after the kids had gone home, and early in the morning before Lillian's unexpected visits. Weekends that I ought to have spent unwinding. However, it was insufficient. My supervisor had begun to point out mistakes in my work, little errors that might have major repercussions. How about asking Dad and Sarah to watch them occasionally? As Lillian dropped off the children for the 3rd time that week, I proposed one day. Marcus's parents, perhaps. Dad is constantly working. Halfway out the door, Lillian answered. Sarah also claims that she gets headaches from the loudness. In addition, you're really skilled with them. I suppressed the temptation to shout as I watched her go in her immaculately ironed luxury clothing. I was meant to manage them while working a full-time job, but she couldn't manage them by herself all day. On a Tuesday, the breaking point occurred. James was especially energized that day, and I had an important deadline. I briefly put down my laptop to prevent Emma from consuming a crayon. James had been jumping on the sofa when I heard the thud, something I had repeatedly warned him not to do, and he had fallen off. At first glance, he appeared to be okay, but by the time Lillian arrived to retrieve them, his shin was covered in an intense purple bruise. She blew up the once she saw it. What on earth? "Chloe!" When she yelled, both children began to wail. "I entrust my kids to you, and you watch them like this?" He could have suffered severe injuries. "Perhaps if you truly looked after your own children." She interrupted me before I could finish. "I should not have left them with you, I knew. You're really careless. What were you doing?" "Too preoccupied with your priceless spreadsheets to protect my baby." Something broke inside of me. Years of bitterness. A trait that is taken for granted. I'm supposed to put everyone else's convenience ahead of my own. Everything poured forth. "Leave now." My voice was very quiet as I spoke. "Leave my flat with your children. Please pardon me. Your free babysitting is over. I work." Lillian. "A legitimate employment that covers my expenses. You need a lunch with your buddies or a spa day, so I can't keep dropping everything. Employ a qualified babysitter." The children were crying in confusion as I essentially shoved them into the corridor while ignoring them with a surprised frown. My phone began to ring as soon as the door closed. "What on earth do you think you're doing, Dad?" Before I could even greet him, he yelled, "Your sister is sobbing uncontrollably." You have no right to treat her in this manner. She is free to watch her children herself if she is unhappy with the way I do it. I fired back. You'll quickly apologize to your sister. Such conduct is not acceptable. Not acceptable? Unexpectedly leaving your children with someone and then being upset when they are unable to offer professional daycare while working a full-time job is inappropriate. Listen up, woman. He lowered his voice to the ominous tone I had heard as a kid. You may forget about your inheritance if you don't start treating your sister with more respect and taking better care of your family. I'll let Lillian handle everything. I realized I had to change how I handled things after this threat. Nobody benefited from the ongoing stress, particularly the children. I phoned Lillian after swallowing my pride. When she attentively listened to my voice, I said, "Hey." Neutral. "Can we have a conversation?" She seemed fairly composed as she answered, "Actually, I was going to call you. I may have been a little too dramatic yesterday. The little cafe midway between our apartments was a neutral spot for us to meet for coffee." Lillian seemed worn out. The flawlessly constructed exterior has a somewhat broken appearance. I began to stir my coffee. I adore Emma and James. I do, you know. I can't, however, keep dropping everything at once. I must have the ability to organize my work routine. Lillian gave a slow nod. I understand. I suppose I have been a little exploitative. We devised a system. Before bringing the kids here, she would give me at least 24 hours notice. No more unexpected weekend stays or doorstep drop-offs. On Tuesday afternoons and Thursday mornings, we would adhere to a regular routine so that I could appropriately arrange my task around daycare. After that, things got better. The children continued to visit, but on a regular basis, which allowed me to plan my job appropriately. Since it wasn't imposed on me, I even began to enjoy our time together more. I organized a mountain ski vacation with my college pals as Christmas drew near. I haven't had a true vacation in a long time. No family drama, no employment, only freedom and snow. I thought it was ideal timing when I learned that Lillian was organizing a family vacation to Europe. A family vacation must include the entire family, children included. I dropped by Lillian's house with Christmas gifts for the children 2 days before to my departure. The living room was in disarray. There are suitcases everywhere. Every surface was covered with clothes. Sarah and Dad were also present. Sarah is organizing soldiers and leading the packing like a commander. These are adorable. As the children devoured their early presents, Lillian yelled, "During their Christmas visit at your house, they can play with them." Halfway to my lips, I froze my coffee cup. What? Apparently unaware of my surprise, Lillian went on, "Oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to Paris with Marcus and his college pals, and then we're going to the Swiss ski resorts. Children are not permitted. Everything will be as it was before. With my buddies," I said gently. "I'm heading out for a ski trip tonight." These initiatives have been in the works for months. There was enough tension in the room for a knife to pierce it. I saw the unmistakable crimson flush that usually preceded an explosion appear on my father's face. "Your plans are completely irrelevant to me." He got out of his recliner and spit. "When will you mature and understand that your family comes first? It is your duty to take care of your sister's children. My obligation?" Incredulous, I repeated. "When did I get the job of becoming their full-time babysitter?" Sarah took a step forward, her face wearing a disapproving mask that I had seen far too often over the years. "You can't merely prioritize your own needs over those of your family, Chloe. What were you contemplating? Making travel plans without seeking our advice? Family doesn't operate like that." I gave a hard chuckle. "Are you consulting? It's really wealthy. Have any of you consulted me before to organizing your trip to Europe? Has anybody ever considered asking me whether I could watch the children? We shouldn't need to inquire." With Emma bouncing on her hip, Lillian added her voice. "Aunt, you're there. How about asking their grandmother?" I pointed to Sarah. "She is also family, isn't she?" Sarah's immaculately composed face broke a little. "Avoid being absurd. There's no way I can watch them. At my age, it's just too taxing." She also adjusted her expensive blouse. "I'm going on the vacation with your father. You are, of course," I whispered. "I get to take a vacation, but everyone else does. That's sufficient." When Dad screamed, Emma began to weep. "Young lady, I'm tired of your attitude. Since you were a kid, you have been challenging. However, this is the final straw. Perhaps you don't deserve to be a part of this family's future if you can't prioritize your family. Lillian will receive the full inheritance, each and every cent. I felt something crack within of me. My existence was viewed as less significant than everyone else's for years, and I was the family doormat and subjected to manipulation. Everything sprang to the surface. What do you know? Don't give up your inheritance. I grabbed my coat and yelled, I'm over being intimidated. I'm tired of being controlled. You may all go directly to hell. Behind me, the door crashed with gratifying power. I felt lighter somehow, as if I had finally broken free from unseen chains, even though my hands were trembling as I drove home. After packed frantically, I headed out to meet my pals. As we made our way to the mountains, I switched off my phone. I didn't think to examine the security camera feed I had placed until that evening, after I had settled into our comfortable cabin, after too many unexpected Lillian visits. They were present, each and every one. My father is beating on my door. James was sitting on the floor playing with his toy cars. Lillian was bouncing a sobbing Emma, and Sarah was attempting to see through the peephole. They had remained for hours, switching between threats and entreaties, obviously unable to comprehend that I had truly put my needs ahead of theirs, for once. Throughout the first day of my trip, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Even after I had set up all of their alerts, I could still see the numbers increasing. Dad missed 27 calls, Lillian missed 43, and Sarah missed 15. The messages and voicemails accumulated, each one more urgent than the one before it. Dad's voice thundered through one of the messages I unintentionally played before deleting Sarah's texts, which was a master lecture and guilt trip, young lady. If you don't call back right now, the kids have never looked so distressed to me. At Christmas, how could you leave your own family behind? Your sister is heartbroken. Do you truly want to be someone like this? The worst were Lillian's video messages. Emma sobbed in the background as tears ruined her flawlessly applied makeup. We can't find anyone else at such short notice, Chloe, please. I'll give you twice as much as I typically do. After I switched off my phone entirely, my buddies saw that I was paying attention and proposed that we get to the slopes early. The exhilaration of skiing and the chill of the chilly air helped me decompress. I received a text from my cousin Rachel 3 days into our trip. Heard about it just now. Don't worry excessively. Through her country club acquaintances, Sarah was able to get a babysitter at last, a retired educator or anything, but she's charging them a lot of money. Professional daycare isn't that inexpensive, I suppose. That made me smile without fail. They had at last been forced to acknowledge the true cost of their incessant demands on me. A week later, my social media alerts were popping when I got home. Dad had shared old family photographs of himself with Lillian and me as kids on social media. I hate to say it, but I formally disowned Chloe, my oldest daughter, today. She has deceived our entire family, not just myself. At Christmas, she left her sister, small niece, and nephew behind in order to fulfill her own self-centered ambitions. A true daughter will always prioritize the needs of her family before her personal desires. My younger daughter, Lillian, who knows the value of family devotion, will inherit all of my possessions and property from this day on. Our house and our lives are no longer suitable for Chloe. Hundreds of people responded to the post, primarily from Dad's church buddies and business partners who sympathized with me and denounced my selfishness. Sarah had posted it along with further commentary about how current attitudes and ungrateful kids are ruining family ties. I closed the app without commenting, or sharing after spending a considerable amount of time staring at the screen. Allow them to lose it in public. I had a peaceful flat to myself for the first time in years, and I had work to do. My heart stopped when I got a message a week after Dad's dramatic social media revelation. Catherine Mitchell wishes to connect with you, was all that was said in the notification. Like a specter from the past, my mother's name is showing up on my computer. Her message was lengthy and well-written. I noticed your father's article, Chloe. Even though years have passed, I still have a lot to convey. Are you open to meeting with me? If you don't want to, I can understand. But know that you and Lillian are always on my mind. I read the rest with a shaking hand. For years, she had been keeping tabs on our lives on social media. My niece and nephew were born, Lillian got married, and I graduated from college. She had witnessed it from afar, unable to make contact. I consented to meet her in a peaceful cafe on the other side of town. I saw her as soon as I walked in. Naturally, she appeared older than I remembered, but her eyes remained the same. I smelt the tiniest hint of the lavender perfume Mom wore when I was a child, when she held me. As we sat down, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Chloe. You need to know the truth, even though I realize that an apology won't make up for all these years." I felt nauseous after hearing her story. Dad had been portraying himself as the victim, while methodically avoiding her around all of us. In addition to notes expressing our happiness with our biological mother, he had sent her pictures and videos of us with Sarah, as well as pictures and videos of birthday celebrations, school functions, and family holidays. Take a look at how successful they are. He would write, "To them, Sarah is an amazing mother. They no longer even recall you. What makes you want to ruin their lives right now?" She showed me years' worth of messages from Dad on her phone. Each one is more cunning than the others. Ceremonial is what the girls call it. If you attempted to re-enter their lives, it would only cause them confusion. Chloe is excelling academically. She gets all of her homework help from Sarah. She had completely forgotten about you. Lillian inquired as to why she didn't resemble her mother. Sarah. We informed her that she inherited her father's traits. That response has made her very pleased. Don't let her down. The most significant discovery, however, concerned money. Because she was married to a wealthy businessman and had a good profession as a corporate lawyer, Mom had been paying hefty alimony for years. She stirred her unfinished coffee and continued, "Your father and I had an agreement. When you reached 18, you were meant to get all of the alimony I paid for you. It was sufficient to give you a start in life and to purchase a modest flat. He assured me that he would share it with you. I reflected on all the instances in which my father had used his inheritance as leverage against me. All those years he'd been threatening to withhold money that wasn't even his to begin with. He informed me that money that had arrived from the mother had deserted us." That night, I sat at my computer, fingers lingering over the keyboard. Then, I started typing in reaction to my father's latest article about disowning me. I feel obligated to reveal some realities that have lately come to light. For years, I believed what my father told me about my mother, that she abandoned us, that she didn't want us, that she chose booze and other men over her children. I believed him when he stated we were better off without her. I discovered now that all of the statements were false. My mom never left us. She was driven away by a guy who presented himself as our savior, while using deceit and deception to keep his children under control. Our mother was covertly giving him large alimony payments, money that should have been paid to me when I reached 18. Instead, he threatened to take away his inheritance if I didn't comply with his demands, so he kept this money over my head for years. He informed our mother that we were happy without our stepmother, that we had forgotten about her, and that we had a new mother. He gave her pictures and videos of us with our stepmother. While she watched us grow up from a distance, providing money to my father that she believed would safeguard my future, he persuaded her that reaching out would negatively impact our psychological well-being. Don't spend your money. An inheritance based on falsehoods is not what I desire. A man who could so brutally take children away from their mothers for his personal gain is not someone I want anything from. You don't know the complete story. Those who left comments on my piece on family loyalty, you didn't. The replies poured in straight away. It shocked and disgusted relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Old family acquaintances contacted us with their own tales of their father's domineering ways. Dad's business associates unfriended him in private. Late that evening, Dad sent a message. "Chloe, everything has been misinterpreted by you. I only wanted to keep you girls safe. Permit me to explain." Without reading the rest, I blocked him. Sarah attempted to contact. Next, Lillian. I also blocked them. Cutting off my sister was painful, but it was even more painful to see her become a reflection of our father, her deception, her attitude of entitlement, and her unwavering belief that she was always correct. He had taught her a lot. Mom, who insisted on paying cash, assisted me in finding a flat in her neighborhood. We now meet together for supper 3 times a week, 6 months later. She fills in the gaps in my recollection by telling me stories about my early years. We occasionally browse through her old pictures. There was a picture of Mom holding me as a baby that I had never seen before, teaching me how to walk, reading to Lillian and myself. "Is there any chance you'll talk to Lillian again?" Mom recently asked. I reflected about my sister and how much my father had molded her into his likeness. "If she ever learns to think for herself, perhaps someday," I said. "For now, though, I'm not holding my breath. I'm determined to make up for the years I missed by repairing my connection with my mother. Family isn't about duty, dominance, or threats, I'm discovering. It has to do with truth, love, and respect. I find these qualities every day with my mother, but I never discovered them at my father's home. I still occasionally receive letters from parents, friends, churchgoers, flying monkeys, and distant cousins who want me to forget and forgive. I remove them all. I've lived under the pressure of other people's expectations for long enough. At last, I'm free." Story 3. My name is Tiffany. I'm 23, and up until lately, my life was rather simple. Since my mother died of severe illness a few years ago, the house I received from my grandmother, my mom's mother, has served as my shelter, following the death of Mom. My dad and I were alone. I made it a point to go see him every Friday after work, even though he lives on the opposite side of the city, and the drive is terrible. We made it into a small custom. We would spend the evening watching old movies and talking about Mom while I brought his favorite takeaway. I treasured those evenings because they allowed me to maintain my relationship with Dad and preserve her memory. But one of those Friday trips was when it all changed. As usual, I arrived at Dad's house with his favorite Chinese cuisine, anticipating our typical peaceful evening. Rather, I discovered him pacing the living room anxiously, and he wasn't alone himself. "I want you to meet this person, Tiffany, honey." He pointed to a lovely woman seated on the couch. She appeared to be around 35 years old, professionally attired, with her hair done and her smile perfected. "It's Rachel. She is my fiancée, and she is doing well." I almost dropped the bags for takeaway. Engaged? Dad had never even discussed dating, much less taken seriously enough to pop the question. I had a brief spike in rage. How could he forget about his mother so fast? Then I realized what I was doing. Dad deserved to be happy, didn't he? Because Mom had been gone for so long? Rachel got to her feet and held out her hand. "Tiffany, I've heard so much about you," she remarked kindly. "Your father is often talking about you." I shook her hand and attempted a smile. "It's good to meet you." My head was aflutter with questions, yet I managed to say. The evening started out badly, but as we ate and spoke, I began to feel more at ease. It was clear how much Dad loved Rachel, and she seemed like a decent person. She would periodically touch his arm or shoulder in a way that appeared natural and kind, and he would continue to gaze at her with those puppy dog eyes. Rachel dropped another bombshell so nonchalantly you'd think she was making a weather comment, just as I was beginning to feel better about the situation. As she assisted her father in clearing the dinner dishes, she added, "Oh, by the way, when my boys see you, they will be ecstatic. 6 and 8 are such lovely years. My water guys almost caused me to choke. She had kids." I was troubled by the way she presented this information, as if it were an afterthought, but I ignored it. This was a lot to digest in one night after all. "That's fantastic," I answered, attempting to seem excited. "I'm excited to meet them." That evening when I was driving home, in a single evening, my thoughts were racing. With only my dad and me, my tranquil, routine existence had changed into something entirely new. Following that initial encounter, everything proceeded swiftly. Before I knew it, Rachel had moved into Dad's house with her boys, Jake and Tommy. The boys ran around creating noise and occasionally screaming tantrums, but they also had their nice moments, which is pretty much what you'd expect from children their age. Jake, the younger, couldn't stay still for more than 5 minutes, while Tommy, the elder, enjoyed playing video games. After 4 months, there was an unexpected wedding to organize. With an almost terrifying fervor, Rachel immersed herself into the preparations. She had strong feelings about everything, including the music, the venue, the flowers, and even the precise color of the tablecloths. I could hear the honey in her voice as she called me, "Tiffany, sweetheart, could you spend a few hours keeping an eye on the boys? I have a last-minutely rescheduled cake taste or an urgent appointment with the florist. Would you mind watching Jake and Tommy?" At first, I didn't mind. The children could be controlled in little doses, and it was only for a few hours here and there. In addition, I wanted to show my dad that I was making an effort to make things work. The wedding day then arrived. The ceremony got off to a decent start. The lads were sitting peacefully in their small suits, tidy and well-behaved. However, they became restless as the reception went on. I was tidying up my meal at my table when I noticed Tommy using a spoon to fling peas at his brother. I stated confidently, "Hey guys," as I approached their table. "That's sufficient. Are you going to strike someone?" Jake was already grabbing his own spoon and using mashed potatoes as a form of retaliation. "Remove it," I cautioned them. "This conduct is inappropriate." At that point, Rachel appeared. Suddenly, she virtually dragged me behind one of the ornamental pillars as her immaculately manicured fingers clamped down on my arm like a vice. "Please don't talk to my kids that way ever again." Anger distorted her cheeks as she hissed. I'd known Dawn for a few months. She was a kind, cheerful woman. Other visitors were being thrown food. I rubbed the spot where she had grasped me and attempted to explain. All I was doing was attempting to avoid a scene. "Pay close attention to what I have to say." She interrupted me. Her tone was harsh and low. "These are my kids. When you have your own children, you have no authority whatsoever to punish them. You may play mommy all you want if you ever have your own children, but don't say anything till then." She put her artificial smile back on her face before I could reply, and she swooned back to the celebration, dazzling the guests and swooning over Dad as if nothing had occurred. Only a few days after the wedding, the alterations began. It seemed as though Rachel had been waiting for her true self to be revealed by the ring on her finger. As usual, I spent more than an hour battling through rush hour traffic on my way to my dad's house on Friday. I had gone to Tony's, the restaurant where Dad and Mom used to celebrate their anniversaries, and picked up his favorite lasagna. However, something seemed different as soon as I entered the room. While the boys raced each other around the living room, Rachel was relaxing on the couch where Mom and Dad used to sit, browsing through her phone. She gave me a look that I can only describe as irritated as she gazed up at me. "You really ought to give us a call before you come over, Tiffany." I felt like an outsider in my childhood home as I stood there holding the takeaway bag. Make a call. However, I always spent Friday nights with my dad. It's customary for us. Rachel's eyes narrowed and she sat up taller. Now, however, things are different. Your dad is a family man. I felt sick to my stomach when she stressed the importance of family, and I'll be the one creating new customs in this area. I turned to face my father, who was seated in his recliner and appeared to be engrossed in his tablet. He remained silent, didn't even raise an eye. The dad who used to confront everyone who irritated me, who instilled in me the value of speaking my mind, sat quietly for a while. Then Rachel's expression brightened with excitement. "However, given your presence," she got to her feet and picked up her handbag. "Did you also bring dinner? This is fantastic. I've been wanting to visit that new Italian restaurant downtown with your father. You can keep an eye on the boys while we enjoy a nice date night." Before I could comprehend the situation, she was dragging Dad out of his chair. "Let's change, honey, please." They vanished 10 minutes later, as simple as that. Don't ask whether I'm free. I didn't check my plans. Tommy and Jake were fighting over who got the larger portion of the lasagna I brought for Dad and me, breaking up fights, stopping kids from leaping over furniture, and attempting to stop them from damaging the house took up the next 3 hours. I was worn out by the time Dad and Rachel arrived home at around 11 p.m. Rachel said, "Oh, we had such a wonderful evening," ignoring the mess the lads had created. "But we're completely worn out. It's time to go to bed, boys." Without even saying thank you, she led them upstairs. Then, suppressing a blatantly phony story, she turned back. "Well, isn't it becoming late already? I think you should go home. You've got a long road ahead of you, Tiffany. The situation worsened the next week. Rachel, who spent her days running the home and didn't have a job, her remarks began to appear unexpectedly at my place, accompanied by the guys. "Marnie, I have an emergency, petty appointment. I'm already backing towards my car," she would remark. "Or I'm going to that new French cafe with your father. The lads despise French cuisine. We'll come get them in a couple of hours." She didn't inquire. She no longer even pretended to inquire. She simply left after dropping them off, as if I were a babysitting service that was available on call. She would occasionally arrive just as I was leaving work, still dressed for the office. Too exhausted to argue, I finally lost it after weeks of this bullshit. I had just ended a grueling workday that included 3 client presentations and a system meltdown that cost me 2 hours of productivity on a Wednesday night. I just wanted to lay down on my couch after taking a nice shower. Rather, as I got into my driveway, Rachel was already unloading the boys and their backpacks from her SUV. She chirped, "Perfect timing," and pushed Tommy in the direction of my front door. "After my appointment at the spa, I'm having supper with your father. In roughly an hour, they will require dinner." "No." Still standing near my car, I responded forcefully. "I wasn't employed as your personal nanny. I'm worn out. I didn't agree to this. And I've had a rough day." Her face took on an intriguing crimson hue. "You dare." She almost yanked the 2 youngsters back towards her car by grabbing them by the arms. "Get in the car, boys," she gave me a sneer after snapping. "Tiffany, you'll regret this attitude." She left tire marks behind as she quickly pulled out of my driveway. My phone rang after I got inside, prepared myself a cup of tea, and had just begun to unwind. Dad was there. "What on earth is the matter with you?" Before I could even greet him, he barked. "You have no right to talk like that to my wife. She's crying." "Hold on, Dad." "No! You hold on! You're acting selfishly and cruelly. I will not put up with you mistreating my wife. She has treated you with nothing but kindness. Just listen, Dad." He had already hung up, though. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach as I sat there looking at my phone. My father had never talked to me in such a manner before in my life. There was no communication from any of them for a week. A part of me was pleased to have some peaceful time, but another part felt hurt. I rewarded myself with takeaway and a bottle of wine on Friday, anticipating a peaceful evening by myself. I heard sounds coming from inside my house as I was getting out of my automobile. My heart began to race. Was there a break-in? I heard what sounded like youngsters giggling as I reached for my phone to contact the cops. What on earth? With trembling hands, I unlocked my front door and saw Tommy and Jake lying on the floor of my living room, surrounded by empty juice cartons and snack packets. There were crumbs all over the place, and cartoons were playing on the TV. "Why are you here?" I insisted. Tommy shrugged while keeping his eyes fixed on the television. "About 4 hours ago, Mom dropped us off. After letting us in with the key, she told we were free to watch TV and eat everything we wanted. The secret, of course. Immediately after moving in, I gave the date a spare key, in the event of an emergency. When will she return?" I feared the response as I asked. "She isn't." Jake spoke up with a smile. "She went to Hawaii with your father for their honeymoon. 2 weeks will pass while they are away." After 4 hours of being left alone in my home, I stood in my living room and gazed at the 2 youngsters. They may have been affected by anything. They may have caused a fire, injured themselves, or, who knows, anything else. My anger increased as I gave it more attention. I took out my phone and dialed Rachel's number while my hands were shaking. I launched my recording app and pressed the start button. I had a feeling I had to record this talk. The phone continued to ring. Rachel finally picked up on what must have been the 10th ring. "What are you looking for?" She lost her temper. Waves sounded in the distance. "Our hotel check-in is underway." "What am I looking for?" I struggled to maintain a steady voice. "Why don't you tell me why you broke into my house and left your kids behind? Without even asking me, right here." It felt like nails on a blackboard when Rachel laughed. "Don't be too theatrical, please. It's scarcely breaking in because I used a key. You don't really have anything better to do either, please pardon me." "Well, Tiffany, let's be honest. In any case, You're just sitting by yourself at home. No social life, no lover, and no family of your own. When you eventually discover someone who is willing to establish a family with you, think about this practice." She hung up before I could answer her. I contacted my dad right away. Now my hands are trembling with anger. The second ring caught his attention. "Tiffany, what is it?" He seemed irritated, as if I were disturbing something crucial. "Our goal is to begin our honeymoon." "Rachel left her children in my house alone herself, Dad. She stopped making a big deal out of nothing when she broke in while I was at work." He interrupted me. "You try to make things dramatic all the time. Why don't you simply let us have a quiet honeymoon?" "All day I'm at work. I can't watch her kids," I virtually yelled. "I have deadlines, meetings, and obligations." "Then," he remarked dismissively, "get a babysitter. It isn't that difficult." I inhaled deeply while attempting to maintain my composure. "Why didn't you get a babysitter before you left for Hawaii if it's so easy?" On the ticket, we obtained a last-minute offer. That was his response. Described everything. There was no time for preparations. "Look, I've got to leave. Rachel is awaiting." Click. I was hardly able to comprehend what had just transpired as I stood there looking at my phone. My father believed it was okay to leave 2 little children alone in the house for hours at a time. He had once grounded me for a week because I had neglected to phone when I was going to be 10 minutes late returning home from school. At that moment, I saw Tommy lying on my couch, typing on his phone. I had a sudden notion. "Tommy, hello?" I shouted, attempting to seem informal. "Have you got your father's number?" "Your father?" Tommy hardly raised his head from his game. "Really?" "Yes, we spoke with him frequently. Do you want me to show you?" He showed me the screen after bringing up his contacts. I hastily copied the number on my mobile device. My heart is racing. For privacy, I went into my home office and called. Before a deep voice responded, the phone rang again. "Hi there? Hello, is Mr. Anderson here?" I inhaled deeply. "I'm Tiffany, Rachel's new stepdaughter, but you don't know me. I'm calling because, well, you should be aware of a problem involving Tommy and Jake." "What sort of circumstance?" Concern hardened his voice instantly. "Are they all right?" I told him everything. How I had been Rachel's free babysitter, how I was at work when she broke into my house, how, before leaving for Hawaii, Mom and my father had left the boys for 4 hours. I could hear his breathing become labored as I talked. He said forcefully, "Text me your address." "In an hour, I'll be there. And I appreciate you calling me, Tiffany." As promised, my doorbell rang precisely 1 hour later. I discovered a tall man in his early 40s as I opened it. Another man with a leather briefcase and an expensive-looking suit stood behind him. Jake, Dad, and Tommy all yelled at him at once and rushed to give him hugs. I could see the relief on his face as he gave them each a bear embrace. "Why don't you guys go get your belongings?" He advised, tidying up whatever mess you produced in Miss Tiffany's residence and ruffling their hair. He turned to face me, while the lads ran about gathering their things. "This is my lawyer, James Carlton," he replied, pointing to the guy wearing the suit. "Do you mind if we spoke for a little while?" As the lads tidied the living area, we sat at my kitchen table. "Please give me a call, Mr. Anderson." Frustrated, Steve raked his hands through his hair. He murmured softly so the boys wouldn't hear him skip planned visits, alter arrangements at the last minute, or use the children as pawns. "I've been dealing with Rachel's stunts for years," he added. "However, this." He gave a head shake. She had never done anything like this before. In addition to leaving the kids alone in an empty house, she is utilizing the $4,000 I pay in child support each month to go to Hawaii and dump them on strangers. Taking out a legal pad, his attorney added, "Could you explain me precisely what occurred, Miss Taylor? Commence at the beginning." I went on to describe the wedding and the steady rise in Rachel's demands during the following hour. Happenings of today. The attorney made thorough notes. As I talked, his scowl became deeper. "And I have this too." Taking out my phone, I said, "I took notes during today's talks with my father and Rachel. Is that useful?" The attorney's eyes glowed. "Very beneficial. Could you please send me those recordings?" when I forwarded the materials to him. As Rachel's patronizing voice filled my kitchen, he nodded and played them back. He turned to face Steve when the recordings were complete. He remarked, "This is just what we needed. Abandonment, danger, misuse of money intended for child support. We've been given a fantastic chance by your ex-wife." The following 2 weeks went by in silence. Rachel never called or texted to inquire after her children. My dad didn't even check in to see how things were going. It seems that their enjoyment of their Hawaiian paradise kept them from worrying. They had left 2 little boys in my home. Then Friday arrived. My front door exploded just as I was getting dressed comfortably after returning from work. Like a hurricane, Rachel came crashing in. Her face was flushed with anger. My dad is directly behind her. She was holding what appeared to be an official-looking letter. "Tommy, Jake." She looked around furiously as she yelled, "Where are my kids?" Unexpectedly, I remained sat on my couch. "Their father is with them." Rachel stopped. "What?" "Their dad. Before you married my dad, you had a kid with a man you know. The person who truly gives a damn about their welfare." She sprang at me. My hair almost got caught in her immaculately manicured nails. "What a tiny snake you are. Are you familiar with this?" In my face, she shook the letter. "This is a family court notice. Full custody is the subject of my ex-husband's lawsuit. My parental rights are in danger of being taken away. Perhaps you need to have considered it before leaving your children in a residence that was unoccupied. Using kids as puppets in your games, squandering their child support money on Hawaiian vacations, or confronting her head-on," I responded. She obviously expected my father to stand up for her when she turned to him. He stepped forward, his face black with wrath. I never knew my own daughter could be so spiteful. He spit. "You've wrecked your stepmother's family out of sheer hatred. As far as I'm concerned, you're no longer my daughter." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. "I didn't destroy anything, Dad. Rachel accomplished that all by herself." Rachel let out another yell of wrath and walked out of my house. My father gave me one more contemptuous glance before following her. 3 weeks later, the custody hearing was held. As I gently narrated everything that had transpired, I could feel Rachel's eyes searing into me from the witness box. The breaking and entering, the desertion, and the casual indifference to her children's safety. The lawyer's face became white as she played the taped phone call I had with Rachel. Her mocking chuckle reverberated across the courtroom. "When you eventually discover someone who is willing to establish a family with you, think about this practice." With every bit of proof, the judge's face became more agitated. Rachel was slouched in her chair by the time I concluded my testimony. She lost all of her prior cockiness. The decision struck like a hammer. Steve Anderson has been granted full custody. Rachel stopped paying child support right away, a strong warning that her parental rights would be completely terminated if she continued to put her kid in risk. You would think that Rachel would have been humbled by losing custody of her kids, but you would be mistaken. Rather, she began a campaign of harassment against me with my father. My phone would be inundated with texts referring to me by every possible name. They began making calls from other phones after I blocked their numbers. They started to appear at my residence after I blocked those. They would constantly bang on my door. Rachel's high-pitched voice reverberated across the community. "This door needs to be opened. You are a home-destroying bitch." I made an effort to ignore them, but after a particularly difficult work week, I finally had enough. Something broke inside me as the hammering began. I strode over and flung open the door. "Do you wish to speak? All right, let's have a conversation." When they barged into my living room, Rachel started ranting about how I had destroyed her life and that she was no longer able to pay for her spa treatments without the child support money. What right do I have to meddle with her family? After listening to her tirade for 30 seconds or so, I turned to my father. "Have you finished?" I held up my hand, but Rachel had to start before we were finished. "I didn't speak to you. I thought of my dad." "Dad. Hello. Do you recall Mom's house? The one in which you now reside?" He blinked, taken aback by the abrupt shift in subject. "Mom gave me the house in her will, you know? The one where I've been paying your rent, just out of genuine kindness." He lost the color in his face. Rachel paused in the middle of her tirade, her jaw hanging wide. I pulled myself to my full height and stood up. This is what is going to occur. The abuse ceases. the call ends. Does it then stop? Because I'll evict you before Rachel here can say spa day if they don't. Then, without free housing or child support to maintain your lifestyle, you can both attempt to make ends meet on your wage alone. I approached and held open the door. Mom would be embarrassed by your behavior. Go out of my house now. Rachel snatched her high-end handbag and hurried away. For a minute, my father lingered, appearing confused. Then silently followed her. 3 months have passed since then. Since then, they haven't disturbed me. Through the grapevine among the family, according to what I've heard, Rachel is ruining my father's life. Whining about their worsened situation all the time. She can no longer use her child support money for herself. It seems that my father's meager income is insufficient to support their way of life. Last week, I ran into Sarah, my cousin, at the grocery store. She informed me that Rachel has been yelling over the prospect of having to shop at ordinary stores rather than her favorite boutiques. She stated, "My father looks exhausted all the time now, as if he's aged years in a matter of months." Do I feel guilty? To be honest, no. This was my dad's choice. He decided to observe while his wife took advantage of my generosity. When she left her kids in my place, he remained silent. Instead of acknowledging that she was mistaken, he decided to disown me. I have no regrets about what I did. Being the villain in someone else's tale is sometimes the price of sticking up for what's right. That's okay with me. Knowing that those guys are loved and protected helps me sleep well at night, even if my connection with my father suffers as a result. Postscript. My father's house is still mine. I haven't kicked him out yet, too. However, if they ever reopen, it's good to have that card in my back pocket.